All right, hopefully it's recording. This is the only second time I've used this streaming program. Um, so today we're going to cover game 31 from Invincible. It's Shusaku against the amateur samurai, Sekiyama again. Um, if you remember, the last three games we covered were the games 1, 2, and 3 of the 20 game series that they played together. Looks like the game went ahead and skipped most of the rest of them because this is actually game 19 that we're going to be going over. And the commentary is by Miyamoto Naoki, Nindan. He's the guy that gives just lots of diagrams and comments, so it should be interesting. Let's take a look. Oh, can anyone guess? Uh, yeah, good question, FC. Um, can anyone guess Black's first move? Do you guys remember Sekiyama's style? No, he was a fan of 5-5-3. Yeah, there you go. Moku Hazushi. Okay, so he does that, and Shusaku again follows suit. He says, "Okay, you want to do that? I'll do the same sort of thing." Black takes the corner, tempura, and white takes the corner. So somewhat unusual opening, but all in all, pretty standard. Black has a bunch of choices, right, for enclosing or approaching unfinished corners. He goes ahead and chooses this one, and white chooses a pincer on the bottom. It looks like probably the bottom is likely to be more valuable than the left side, right? When we see this C16 stone low and settled on the left, looks like neither side can really hope to do too much on the bottom. But if white gets a Shamari in the bottom left, perhaps the bottom could be pretty good, right? So he does a pincer, two-space pincer, which is pretty interesting because I'm not sure I remember seeing a two-space low pincer yet in any of these games. Maybe we have, but it's definitely rare. And the next move is even more rare. Anyone want to hazard a guess where black plays? I'll give you a hint and say that it's very aggressive. Oh, the elephant jump. No, not that one. That's a good guess though. G4, D5. He actually plays this attachment on top of white stone. And like if we're just talking about basics, I think in this case we would probably say don't touch a weak stone. Yeah, good bet. Um, but all Miyamoto said is it's clear that black's in a fighting move, right? Fighting mood. I think that's fair to say. He's playing this type of Joseki. Now, white actually has about three main choices here. Let me mark them so I remember to do the variations. The simplest is just to back off, right? This is a stone touches stone situation. So the first rule for white is no tanuki. The second rule is if you're stronger in this area, you should usually just extend to leave as few forcing moves for black as possible. That's actually what Shusaku does in this case. Just keeps himself strong, minimize forcing moves left over for black. Uh, Actually, let's just go forward a little bit. Where for black now? Remind me to go back and look at those variations if I forget. G3. Good, yeah. G3 is important. Even though there's a cut here, this is the move to use all the stones well. This would just be slack, right? The shape is okay, but it's very slack. There's not a lot of pressure on white. So white could probably just choose something very easy at this point. So black plays here, puts more pressure. There is a cut, but the thing is, white has an A stone over here, which means black has like forcing moves that he could use to handle the cut if white cuts, right? So that's why this is okay. And so white turns to help his two stones and to put more pressure on black stones and on the cut. So now let's go back and take a look at some of the different variations here. If white hanes, where for black? Should probably be able to figure this out based on what we just looked at. Yeah, G3. This is actually going to turn into the same thing. To Atari right now, either of these Ataris would not really be wise because we don't know which one we want, right? So white would just connect anyway. And if you take a look at that, we're just back in the same position as the game. So that would definitely be possible. Just to reiterate this again, playing Atari in this case is not necessarily good because we need to connect anyway. And now all we've done is we've helped black connect, right? Where we might actually want to cut here instead later. So that would be Ajikeshi. The other thing white could do, the most aggressive would be this Hane, right? And only one move for black here. Any of the weaker players want to try this one out? 8Q or weaker? Oh, I guess it's actually the same move. Still, huh? G3, again, this is the only way to use A and B together. Yeah, always G3 for black. That's interesting. I didn't actually notice that earlier. So at this case, or at this point, white has to figure out how to fight this crosscut, right? And the general rules for the crosscut are if you can capture any of your opponent's cutting stones immediately, just go ahead and do that, right? Because then you're connected and you've won the crosscut. But we can't capture either of these, right? So can't do that. So the next rule is to just help whichever stone is weaker, right? So H3 is on the inside, so that one looks weaker. So white would probably help this one. Notice we don't play any sort of Ataris to help black. So we would just extend and from here, black could play a pincer, right? Oh no, actually that's not right. Sorry. I'm mixing my variations. Black has two moves here that are more severe. This one, you guys probably know A, right? This is one way of trying to deal with the cut. And there's another one which it looks really unusual, but it's actually a Tsuji in this case. Does anyone know it? I wouldn't expect anyone to know it. I don't think I saw it before reviewing this game. The other choice is actually this attachment, which is kind of weird. But basically what we're trying to do is handle this cut somehow, right? So natural, yeah. We don't want to just play like some crazy move, right? Like this is really, really bad. Like never do this, right? So black's trying to find some way of handling the cut. Maybe let's look at the more straightforward one first. So you can press here, right? And the idea would be that, press on the A stone, and then maybe we can Atari here later, and with these helping stones, we'll be able to capture it. So that's the idea here. And actually, white's most usual move is to say, okay, well, I don't want you to do that, and to just reinforce here. Of course, that lets black follow up in the corner. White can take this, and then black has two choices. One is here, nice and solid, or black might like to descend. So it's kind of a trade of the corner territory for influence, right? So that's one thing that could possibly happen. Seems pretty reasonable. That would be the trading way. Now, if white tries to continue and actually answers here, now's where black is going to try and use this stone to help squeeze, right? That's the whole point of the d5 move. So let's take a look at how that works. You can see how this stone is actually going to help now, right? And we can't actually kill the two stones, but we've got a successful squeeze here. Does anyone know where to go next for white? Important timing thing here. I think it's pretty instructive, actually. J4, perfect. Yeah. Um, this is important timing, and we'll see why in a second. Right now, black has to answer, right? So white gets the A-B exchange in Sente for free, which is good. And then white's going to try and save these stones, which he can, right? But we can squeeze and squeeze. And now we can keep these guys low. So black can play like this, right? And this is a pretty reasonable result. Depending on the situation, Miyamoto didn't actually show this, but I think in certain situations, black might even try this one, right? A little looser, so that it's a little harder for white to get free moves. So that's one thing that can happen. Now let's take a look at this exchange, because I think this is a really good example of proper timing for forcing moves. Let's say white just played this immediately. Well, now black has Sente and Sente, right? Do you guys see the difference now? Notice how this stone, the marked one, is now incredibly unimportant. Does everyone see that? That means that if white plays A, black will never answer at B anymore. You guys see that? So this is very important timing. If white were to do this now, black will just take Sente, right? I don't know, just some sort of move. Actually, probably over here somewhere, or maybe here. So the idea here is you get stronger, and this isn't necessarily easy to do, but at this moment, white sees, okay, H4 is about to become a very unimportant stone. So time to do this for free. So I thought that was pretty instructive. So that's the one way. And now this is a Tsuji in this case. The first variation that could happen would be pretty much the same as one of the ones we just looked at. White could defend, and then black would follow up, right? And white would capture here, and black could capture here. So this is really similar to one of the ones we just looked at. So that's possible. But now the question becomes, what happens if white plays what looks to be the fighting move, right? Coming out of the elephant's eye. Can anyone follow this up as black? Good, Ruckus. When I was preparing for this lecture, I anticipated that Ruckus was going to be the one to get this. Don't you feel proud now? Yeah, driving to Suji. So how does that work? Give me the moves. Yeah, so the idea with the driving to Suji is we're going to make this stone heavier. So we Atari. White comes out. Now these stones are heavier, right? Now we come in between. Yeah, this is called driving to Suji. See how white has two problems now? Because we made the squares heavier and now we come right in between them and white's like, uh-oh, I can't fix both, right? So he's got to come out. I think it's called driving because once you start it, it's kind of this forced thing that white can't really get out of. So this is forced, and that's not where black should play. Black should play here. So we can get these two stones, right? And from here, white has two choices. Again, come here, but black can get the corner. So again, it's similar. Black's getting the corner, white's getting the outside. White also might try or decide to play this sort of move. Black can capture, or maybe can do this sort of thing too, if that gets rid of the Aji. So that pretty much covers the variations for this one. Kind of a big side tour, but hopefully there's some useful stuff there. So let's get back to the game then. So this is the game variation. Okay, and white pushes up. Um, so where would be the natural move for black here? The shape move. F4. F4 would leave a really painful Atari at H5. H5, right. Funny Bunny's clever. He already sees where this is going. Yeah, so locally, walking ahead is the shape, right? White push from behind, so let's walk ahead. Um, Unfortunately, that would be very slack, much in the same way that this move earlier we saw would be slack. So at this moment, black sees he doesn't have time for that. So it's time to, you know, it's time to go after this guy. Uh, you can actually think of the two mark stones as being almost like a leaning attack. Does that make sense? And then the main thing is like the two squares against A, and maybe these two triangle stones will help. Yeah, this is not the shape move. Um, this would be locally the shape move, right? But what I'm trying to point out is that then white will get to play on both sides, and this would be a very unhappy result for black, right? He's not doing much. So that's why it's time to switch, and we get this sort of result. And so white's got to help his inside stone. So he actually leans in this case, right? So he's going to lean against A. So A is going to get stronger. White's also going to get stronger. And maybe he'll be able to attack the stones on the bottom, right? Now let's say if white Atari's here, where for black? Yeah, perfect. Yeah, D5. So this would be just right for black, right? Sealing in that one stone. That's why white needs to come out first. And that's contact, so black's going to answer. White's going to walk ahead. This is where it gets pretty complicated. To be honest, this gets well beyond what I would ever be able to figure out in a game. But let's try to take a look at it anyway. Black continues pushing from behind. You can see that maybe he's interested in growing a moyo, like in the top left area. Miyamoto pointed out that if black comes here now, and this is most likely where I would play at this point. He pointed out that white would be perfectly happy to just turn here and keep the left under control. And also there's still cutting points and things to aim at on the bottom, right? So black keeps pushing. And this is, again, where it gets a little deep for me. Yeah, the stones go walking. Uh, White doesn't walk ahead in this case. He plays the Atari from here. So sort of trying to attack all these guys. And Miyamoto actually gave a reason, though, for not extending here. Essentially what he said is black could attach, descend, and let's say white plays here, and black descends. So black is alive now, and this is where it gets a little subtle, but his point was that white wants to capture now with h4, h5 rather, but it's a little over concentrated with the A move, right? So with that Panuki, you'd almost rather not have A. That's a little tough to see, but that was his explanation for why just playing the Atari first rather than extending. So black needs to settle. Where's the best place to do that? Yeah, I'm tempted to like that result as white too, Mr. M dash. Yeah, so black's got to settle. Let me make sure I get this order right. Yeah, okay, so black makes two forcing moves here, A and B, and Miyamoto pointed out that the order of these is very important. So first let me just click what they played, and then I'll go back and try to explain. So it ended up being like this. White got to Atari the cornerstone, and black ended up being able to connect. So let's try to understand what they were thinking. The first thing Miyamoto pointed out is that if black does this one first, this isn't the right order. White will answer, and then when black plays here, in this case, white can make a different decision and can play B instead of A. And now we can see black's getting a little bit squeezed on the bottom. And uh, anyone that know the next move here for white? This is somewhat advanced as well. Obviously, we need to connect somehow, right? But what's the good style way of doing that? Good, yeah. So we Atari first to make black heavier, and then we connect. And so this result isn't very good for black, right? You can see that the corner is kind of open already, and then these two stones are heavy, right? And then the three stones on the left maybe could be problematic too. So this result seems good for white. Um, by the way, so if you just connect, if this is the main move, but if you play here first, it's not 100% the best, right? Similar to what we saw earlier. Now later when white plays A, black's not going to really care anymore, right? Because after white has already connected, the F6 stone becomes very unimportant. So the idea is let's make that heavy first, and then this move becomes very natural. That's kind of a style or tactic thing. It's pretty important. Yeah, me too, FC. Little by little, it's all we can do. Um, okay, so give me a second here. I just want to make sure don't miss any of the variations because there were quite a few. Okay, so notice how white played Atari here. So the point is now if white does this one, it's a little different, right? Because white already committed to A, not to B. So in this case, black could push, could make this exchange. And interestingly, there's actually this double Hane sort of move here because of this Aji. So let's take a look at how this would work. There's Atari, and it might look like black's just giving up a stone here, but actually he's not because he can extend, right? And let me just do white's proper moves first. White would have to come back and defend. Black could defend. And now the pain point for white here is that it doesn't seem like there's a very good way to fix the A Aji, or not A, just this cutting point. He's probably just going to have to do this Dame connection, which is pretty unhappy. So that's what he's trying to avoid, according to Miyamoto. Now let's go back and take a look at more of the details here that you may not have noticed. So if white just tries to capture these, we're going to come like this, right? And can come underneath. So if you notice, this doesn't have two eyes, and this doesn't work for white because of this empty spot, right? That's connect and die. The timing's pretty important though. Like I think if Notice how white, or no, black, added a stone to the sacrifice. If you do this one too early, then white captures and is just alive. And then you do this thinking you're clever, but white can just say, I already lived in the corner, right? And can now just fix this. And this, of course, is pretty awful for black. So timing is important there as well. Okay, so all in all, that's why white just Ataris this in the corner, and black ends up being able to connect. So pretty involved, right? One of the comments was, after all of this, something like, these past moves, there's been much more than meets the eye. So white reinforces a little bit, also threatening to cut through. So black has to fix. And white's fine for now. And so he plays a nice big valuable move, right? Remember how I said if white could get this Shamari, then these pincer stones could make a very nice area on the bottom. It seems like that's what's happened here. Black plays here. Isn't the cut at f7 a liability for black later? Could be. You're talking about this, right? It looks like it's probably a little too early, but I would say once once these guys got stronger, black would definitely have to start worrying about that. At this point, I think white would end up having trouble dealing with both, but yeah, it's a type of fight you could probably do if you really wanted to, but not necessarily favorable at this moment. Okay, so black plays here kind of as a probe. White answers, and again, this situation becomes very interesting. There's a lot of details here that I definitely would not have seen on my own. Where would you guys play next as black? Just instinctually, just be honest. I know where I would play, like almost immediately. Yeah, d4, right? I would just play d4. c2. Ruckus is seeing some interesting, yeah, there actually is interesting Aji over there. Uh, always take the ko first. Exactly, yeah. Um, but actually, it's not a good move. I'll show why in a second. Sekiyama plays here instead, which is very interesting. It's also kind of like another probe. Um, and Shusaku, of course, answers correctly. Actually, where would you guys answer? I guess let's make this a little more fun. How to answer this black move. J5, F7. No one would play J6. I think J6 would probably be pretty common as well. But indeed, J5 is correct. And we'll see why. First, let's go back and see why not capture here. Okay, it seems like it's pretty good because it's Sente. White has to capture, and black can even play here. The thing is, black's not super ready to play this ko, because when white captures here, notice this one is an Atari. So black's going to ignore whatever ko, or white's going to ignore whatever ko threat black makes next. Probably it would be here, right? I think this is probably the best one. But white's going to ignore, and his capture is pretty much Sente, right? Because now black needs to come out. So not very good. So that's why don't capture there. And the other thing, which is interesting, is there's actually more Aji back there. If white plays here, it seems like a perfectly normal move. This could actually get really, really nasty. Because with this as Sente, the corner situation changes now. Notice how now the square guy's kind of backed up. Now we can actually play Ruckus's move at c2. And this gets actually really, really scary. If white plays at A, black's just going to connect and white's dead, right? So that's not going to work. So black would have to play from here. When black turns, that threatens to capture a stone. So we can't allow that. Then black can play here. If white connects, black links up and white's dead. So white has to come down. And now this is a ko for the entire corner. And that whole thing could happen with just this tiny little misplay at J6 instead of J5, right? That's why I kind of wanted to see if anyone was going to say J6. So this would be a disaster, right? Pretty bad. So you can see they're really paying attention to a lot of specifics here. So that's why white keeps it strong here, so that this move is not sente. Black pushes and hanes. And now he plays a pretty interesting move. He encloses this empty corner, and it's an unusual enclosure, right? But it's actually pretty cool with what the type of game he's trying to play, right? He's trying to do a Moyo style. So in this case, it's not just like, look at me, I'm playing an unusual move to be unusual. It actually makes sense on this board. So that's pretty cool. The other thing to look at is the pushing battle, right? This sort of thing is always pretty urgent as a possibility to play. So let's see how this might go. And let's maybe try to figure out why he didn't play like this. So what do you guys think about this type of result? Personally, I think it's style. Yeah, so I would never say that black can't play like this, but yeah, FC's kind of onto the key point. The key point here, which is pretty scary for black, is that what white got looks real, right? It looks like that's essentially cash at this point, whereas black has a ton of potential, but it's almost too much potential, right? It's really, really big to the point that it's much harder to keep. So while this is a possibility and playable, it's kind of like a big gamble. So that's probably why he didn't do that. So he played here. Now that being the case, letting black do this now would probably be too much, right? So white turns here, and it might look slow, but it's actually sort of the only move. Very important, right? White is consolidating his area on the bottom, and this is also the first step in keeping black's center in check. This move takes a lot of strength to play, I would say. Not that easy to play. All right, let's see. Where did black go next? Yeah, and I guess the reason it's difficult to play is because like now black gets to play another big move, right? And it feels like maybe white is falling behind. Black getting to play A and B in a row like that. Notice that B is another unusual Shimari, right? This would be the normal one. And Sekiyama is a big fan of unusual Shimaris, it seems like. But again, it fits the board, right? If he's thinking about a center area, Q15 is going to be better for that than R16. So pretty interesting. Now white gets this Atari, and this is super powerful, right? Like now, the entire landscape of the center just changed. This move, I mean, let's just compare it. compared to this is enormous, right? Now white is controlling the center. Oh, by the way, we should look at this because this is the natural move, right? And black could play this sort of thing, but it kind of suffers for this with the same sort of issue, whereas white's area looks pretty real, but the left side is so open, right? And white can probably invade now on the left. So can anyone guess where to invade? Shusaku picks a really interesting invasion point in the game, and I don't I don't think anyone is going to come up with it. B16, yeah, that looks like a place I would probably think about starting. He picks a really interesting move that turns out to be a good one. I won't give it away just yet because it's the same move as in the real game. But in any case, it's almost too big, right? D16, nope. Okay, so let's just go with the real game and we'll see it pretty soon. Oh, black answers that to keep his position strong and high. And is this when we see the invasion? Yes, it is. He actually invades here, which is really interesting. You can see that he's looking at the thinness of this Shamari, right? He would never do this if A was at B, right? That wouldn't make any sense. So this thin area is key to this move. I would not come up with this move. We'll take a look at the details in a second. Black has to fix his thin area. White gets another forcing move here. He captures here as a forcing move because he wants to make sure that black has this Aoji in his mind, right? That he has to really worry about his 3 stones here. Now next move for white on the left. I wonder if anyone will pick Shusaku's move here. Either. I don't think I would. It's another very interesting move that makes sense after you see it, but not really before. C11. Yeah, C11 feels natural. C10 seems kind of reasonable, but he actually keeps it super tight. C12. And that's pretty interesting, right? It's really tight. And what Miyamoto said is that like this looks faster, but it's actually just thinner. But I don't know. It's really hard to make a judgment on that. Like to me, to say this is a bad move, but he kept it nice and strong, which is really, I don't know. It's really, really interesting. Book talker. Okay, so let's go back to here. Wouldn't you like to pincer this stone? So how do we pincer this if we do want to? Where's the proper pincer? C12. Good, I'm glad you said that. D12. Yeah, actually D12. So, Ruckus, this is something you can learn here. When you've got, notice how white is on the 4th line and C16 is already on the 3rd line. That means that white is already undercut. So we don't need another stone on, yeah, sorry. Sorry, that's my teaching style. I'm glad you said the wrong thing so I can talk about how wrong it is. So this is the correct pincer because you actually only need 1 stone that's undercutting white. So you wouldn't need 2 on the 3rd line. So it'd be like this. Okay. But now white has a nice Sabaki sequence here. Attach and crosscut, right? So this depends on what would happen in this situation. So let's take a look. If black does this, white could Atari, connect. This sort of result white is fine, right? White's pretty happy. So that's not a big deal. Look at one more variation. This one. This is a bit more complicated. Notice we extend here, don't capture the stone, or we'll get squeezed more. Tari and then capture. So black's got to help these two stones. And so now white has this cut, which is kind of interesting because there's two choices for black, right? Do I come out with A or do I capture with B? And there's kind of pluses and minuses to both. If black captures, then white gets Sente Atari, right? And you can see that there's Aji on the outside. These stones are weak, and then there's a possibility of a Hane at A causing problems. But if you go with this one, now the corner is already alive, right? Because this move is Sente. So either way, white's not in too much trouble. Let's go back and try to answer Nimbim's question. D18, not a good idea. D18 right now, do you mean? Or when D18? In the variation where white E17. Oh, okay. Tari, Tari. Oh, like this. Let's see. I think we still just connect, right? Yeah, I think we just connect and then we look forward to getting either A or B in Sente. So I think that's probably the reason not to play there. Maybe does Ruckus want to play here first? Yeah, that's probably possible too. The forcing moves. I think it's because of the forcing moves. I meant when black takes at C18. Oh, okay. Oh. Why not Atari? Yeah, that's a good question. I actually wondered about this as well. Normally we would play here, right? So is there a reason not to do that in this case? If black just answers, that seems like a gain for us, right? So is there something more severe? Is there this sort of thing? I think what Yoyama is saying is the same sort of thing, right? So like this? Yeah, I guess white probably ends up kind of low and sad in this result. Yeah, with black ahead here. That's interesting. It's pretty interesting. Miyamoto didn't actually talk about this. Black could fight the Ko though. Okay, so I think. Wait. I played the white side of this in many, many games. Nice. The best is when you think it's a Ko and it's actually like a squeeze where they just Atari, Atari, Atari and kill you. And you're like, how did I not see that? Okay, so okay, so I did show both of those. Okay, so that's sort of why this move is so good. If white answers is in the game, or if black answers is in the game, white can settle on the left. And if black pincers, since this is thin, white can sabaki. So why not d15? d15 like right now? Yeah, I'm not sure. I wondered about this also. So how will white play here? Like that? I don't know. I'm not even sure, to be honest, because this is probably heavy now, right? That looks heavy. Maybe Kosumi a little lighter. Something like this might actually be a good move, huh? Because then you have follow-ups. Your guess is probably as good as mine on this one. F14, jump. And like aim at A or B. Maybe, yeah, I'm not sure. It's a good question. Okay, so here, we're for black. C10 or E12. Yeah, FC's basically got the two general directions down. This is where black plays, and Miyamoto felt this was correct. I agree. This is the move to keep white from settling easily, right? Yeah, this is actually the exact other move that was suggested. With this one, it looks like you're making something really nice on top, right? So it's tempting, but it's going to let white settle his weak group basically in the next move. So usually strong players won't allow this sort of thing because they feel there's so much value in keeping the group weak, right? Now here's another test. We're for white next. If you're white here, where are you going to play to settle? Yeah, good. There's sort of like a habit of just playing a two space, right? But actually, in this sort of case, white would keep it really nice and solid at C10 to leave, to not have to worry about stuff like this. So like this, and don't come too close to the wall. I think black's going to have to worry about this AIG anyway. Okay, so that's why black does this to keep white weak. So we don't really even have a base yet, right? And white's weak enough that he decides he's going to touch a strong stone to see if he can get some forcing moves. And black goes with the fighting response. This is pretty much, after black plays here, it's pretty much forced what happens. White's got a cut. Black pushes. That gives white the free Atari and the Hane and that. So you can see that this stone here that got captured was a sacrifice, but we got all sorts of forcing moves on the outside, which really help us to settle. Now, if black doesn't want to do that and backs off here, Miyamoto pointed out most likely what white will do is he'll either push here or jump like this. But what he's going to be aiming at is for this clamp later, right? That's going to be the way he's going to use this Aji. He's going to use the A stone by clamping on top to try and settle. So the real game went like this. And white has to keep trying to settle nice and slowly here. And black plays sort of an interesting move here. This is probably where I would play without thinking about all the details, though. There's a particular reason black plays here. The normal move is actually here, but in this case, he's worried that white can just force twice first, and then play something on the right-hand side, to finish up white's area and also to start diminishing black's area. So the idea behind this one is to try and keep Sente. So let's see how that works. White still wants to defend, get his group stronger. But in this case, now black actually is going to leave these two stones and then take Sente. First, he makes this exchange. This is Sente, of course. Um, you'll remember from earlier that if white does not answer, black has this really cool move here, and it's just all the same stuff. So that would be ko for the whole corner. So that's just a sente forcing exchange, which takes some of the pressure off this cut here, I suppose. And now he's going to go reduce white's area. How would you guys reduce? How deep do you want to go? Oh, shoulder hit. Okay, so Funny Bunny plays the same move as Sekiyama then. Oh, is this not the one you meant? Oh no, you're just surprised that this is the actual move. Okay. Yeah, this is where he played, and Miyamoto said it looks too deep. Uh, because, like, if you remember, White spent all this time in the center, right? So now you can kind of see how valuable these moves are. This move's actually pretty deep. Um, and all he really said about it was that he must have felt like or calculated that this wouldn't be enough. But to me, this just looks great. Now, of course, I can't count for squat, but just by feeling, this feels better to me, right? Because you're not only reducing, you're also growing your own, making a nice 5-space extension. So to me, this seems more annoying as white to have to deal with this, but he came all the way in. So if this is too deep, how do we answer it? Q8, perfect. Yeah, so this is the natural move. Now the normal move, shape move, is here or here, right? But this would be a total RJM move that is too passive and wastes white's thickness, right? So white has to attack here, which is what he does. Let's look at these moves. Uh, this sort of move would allow black to play lightly, right? So he can jump. Let's see if I remember how this went. Can play like this, and now you can see black's threatening to come through. So if white wants to bridge that gap, we're next for black to finish this shape. Q10, that's a little strange. Q10 looks a little strange, although I can't say it's super bad. I want to see some more possibilities before I answer. S7, R8, N6. Oh, force a little more first. Interesting. Yeah, N6 would probably be a little too early because black can do that at any time later. Yeah, Funny Bunny got the shape move is here. The main thing I wanted to point out with this R8 is that it emphasizes, or actually I guess I don't know, it's hard to put this. It emphasizes how unimportant the Q6 stone is, right? So you're not going to do something like this, right? Which pretends like this stone is valuable when it's not. And that's just going to leave peeps and stuff. So this move shows a good attitude towards the Q6 stone. Now this would be like the worst, right? Really committing yourself to that unimportant stone. Okay, so this would be a fail for white to let black get off the hook so easy. Let's look at the other fail. Is similar. Same thing, kind of in a different direction. Now, where next for white? Where's the shape move here? To bridge the bottom. How do we take the bottom? Good, Ruckus. Yeah, 05. Perfect. But then black can just block here, right? So this is another fail for white. This is like you got what you wanted on the bottom, and then you take a look at what black got, and suddenly you're not feeling too happy about it anymore. So that's why white attacks. And you can see that black's pretty heavy here. And Miyamoto made a comment about this move. He said, even though this move looks so normal and yeah, just like a normal move, it's actually really severe. It just puts a lot of pressure on black. And so black kind of fights the best he can here by attaching, um, but it's still difficult. Uh, this is a normal way of trying to settle, but actually it's sort of flustered by this S5 stone. Miyamoto showed two really long variations here, so let's take a look at what could happen. Black could try to fight like this, but it's actually pretty difficult. A doesn't really work because then white can just connect back home, which means these three would be dead. So it's going to be this sort of fight. And white just has to be able to get enough liberties, right? So that he can come back. So let's say black goes all the way to here. White's going to take his Atari and Sente while he can. And where's the key move for killing the liberties in black? Right. Good. And now white has a really simple move now that creates a nice Miai. Where is that? Where's the move? T9, yeah, perfect. So you can see the Miai now is to live with A or to connect under with T7. So that means black stones are all dead. So indeed, that's probably game over. So that's not going to work. So the only other chance would be to Hane one earlier. Just depends on if this is actually, you know, black is strong enough to make this happen. It'd be something like this. White can't save these. He just goes far enough to get the liberties he needs. And then it's going to be a matter of this fight, which you can probably tell that this is too much for black to try and handle. But let's see. What can he do? It seems like the only move is here, right? Anything else is not going to work, so he's got to play here. And you can see how constrained black is. Still has to come out. Again, this is the only choice. Anything else will be squeezed, like this, for example. Will just be squeezed. So where's the next move for white? You have to stay severe here, or might not work out. P11. Oh wow, P11. Does that work? Maybe that works too. This is the normal move, yeah, is this Hane here. And there's nothing black can do from this point. Does this work? That might work too, right? But you're getting less, I guess. Like with this one, you're getting these stones, right? Whereas with this one, just for simplicity's sake, black can at least save those, right? Okay, so let's go back. So notice how this move, S5, is actually key in that sequence. So that's what, this is normal, but that's why he didn't do that. He went for this one. And white plays really severe. He Hane's on the inside. The normal Hane would be here, but in this case it's not so good because, well, white goes back to connect. Black's just getting a nice table shape there, right? So probably not too good. So let's take a look at how the game is. Also, I would point out that whenever you can get your opponent to cut with an up, that's something to consider, right? Because as black, we don't really like cutting and making an empty triangle like this. It just feels so dumb. Um, Actually, the A stone feels almost like a complete waste at this point. Okay, so ends up like this. Even if you lose the game, you've won in spirit. Okay, so black gets this, which may seem good, but white can still surround, right? So you can see how valuable this Atari from earlier is. Black goes to try to settle. White keeps poking the eyes out. This move is actually not that easy to find, but is actually the key point for poking the eyes out, I guess. And I had to, read that comment and look at it for a while. And I think the reason is, otherwise black can get this in almost in sente, threatening A, or at the very least, even really stupid like this, the eyes are coming in pretty quickly. So white plays there. Black plays a really nice move here, which creates a nice miai of A to settle or B to run out. So that's a pretty cool move. White pokes in between. Black says, okay, in that case, I need to come out. The nice thing about this way for white is that when he connects back, he's still threatening to take a big profit, right, with cutting at A. Black does not have time for that. So he keeps coming out. Notice how maybe he can almost turn this against white, depending. White makes one, forcing exchange, and A is there, but that would be pretty bad, right? White has to settle his group here first, so that's what he does. White can take this profit, but I think this would be losing the war, right? These stones are too heavy, so you have to get the base first. And this situation is still pretty difficult for black. He makes a peep. Let's see, N7. Yeah, exactly. That's why it's pretty difficult. Frigate saw it before I could show it. Good. So he makes a forcing move, and he makes another probe here, which is good because later on, black might be able to play A to try and separate one stone off. But essentially for black here, let's see what he tries to do. He basically realizes he's in the position that if he connects here, white can cut that. If he connects here, white can cut like this and create a miai. So there's no way he can connect right now. So that seems pretty bad, but he fights really valiantly in this area. So he attaches here, tries to help his group, and he tries to set up a squeeze on the bottom. And somehow he does. It's pretty impressive, I think. So let's see what happens. White captures. Black is just trying to keep the pressure on these liberties. And the shape is pretty yucky to be broken like this, right? But he keeps maximum pressure up. And believe it or not, this actually works. This is going to take us a moment to look at. But let's just look at it step by step. Black is keeping maximum liberty pressure on the bottom. And also notice how he's getting closer to the left-hand group now. So white says, you know what, you're right. I need to take care of my left-hand group. First, he plays this probe. Black essentially has to answer at A, right? So that's a nice exchange. This would not be too hot, right? Because white can Atari and then come through like this. Black can't allow that. So he plays here and plays the Hane to settle his group. And let's see. And now black plays here. So now the situation has actually changed. It's pretty surprising. So the question is, can white do A anymore? And it's really complicated, but short answer is no, not really. Let's try to look at why. First, let's look at what gets played. Also notice that if white can't come through, these stones are kind of like cut off, right? Like they have to make sure they go somewhere. So he's going to do that. First, he makes a forcing move. Black connects to make sure white can't Hane through here very easily. That gives white free Atari. Yeah, Frigate, if you want, you can go back and look at the 3 previous lectures. They're all on YouTube with this same guy. This guy was actually a samurai. And so Go was something he did on the side. And he made it to basically he could play against Shusaku on like a 1 stone level, right? So pretty impressive, yeah. But I talk about the story more in the previous video, so I'm probably not going to do it again. But if you're interested, you can go watch those. Okay, so notice how white has to make sure these guys are connected now. So he ends up having to connect underneath, actually. Yeah, that's a really interesting question, huh, Ruckus? Like, could he do it giving 2 stones? Forcing move. Okay, so white ends up connecting underneath, but notice black actually broke this area up. Pretty successful. So let's go back and see about this push here. This requires a lot of reading. The first question is this Atari. Now, you might be tempted to say, well, who cares about those 4 stones? They're not that important. The thing is, if you give up these 4, black becomes so thick, right? There's an incentive to save these because it preserves all the cuts. Actually, I should use them. All the cuts, right? All the weaknesses in black shape. So white really wants to connect here. So let's say he connects. Now black wedges in. Right, it would weaken the group on top. Thanks, Ruckus. So now you can see white's got liberty problems, right? He can play here. This is the best move. But black has Tsuji here. And cut. White has to capture, because if he doesn't, if he goes like this, where for black? Pretty easy Tsuji problem, right? Yeah, just throw in and squeeze all the way. So white is forced to capture. That gives black a free move, and black can descend. And you can see we've got a semi-I here, and white isn't too hot on liberties, actually. So let's say he goes for more, right? Now black has a really nice move here, which is forcing, right? Because if black plays again, he's going to have 2 eyes. The only move to take it away for black or for white is here and here. So black doesn't have 2 eyes yet, but notice he gained some liberties and some eye shape from those exchanges there. Now he can attack here. Pretty scary. Let's see, where for white next in this fight? I think this extension. All right, okay, so extend. Black can Atari. This might look like, this move surprised me a little bit because it looks like black's going after an unimportant stone, but actually black's next move is A, right? Which would live, not B. So that's the trick here. So white definitely does have to fix here by connecting. Black can capture. That's threatening to live. If he captures again, he has two eyes, right? So connect. And now this just got really dangerous, right? So if white cuts, that's Atari. And we can't do G1, so we have to do this. And this is a ko for all the marbles. So this would be total collapse for white, right? To get this kind of result in his own area. So I don't know, if he read all that, hats off to him. That's pretty complicated, but hopefully that was enjoyable. So white actually had to connect underneath in the real game. I have a feeling they did too, yeah. Now the thing to notice is this group still isn't settled. So while black has broken all of this up, it's still not settled. So he keeps running away. And white doesn't want to let him connect too easily. By the way, notice that this still doesn't work, right? The liberties are too short. So that looks like it can be cut, but it's actually safe for now. This is a really big, complicated fighting game now that I'm thinking about it. This next area is pretty complicated and a big fight as well. So let's just take a look at what happens here. At this point, black plays another giant fighting move. Obviously, there's all sorts of stuff going on, like in this area, but he says, you know what, I'm just going to attack your group over here by descending first. And there was a really funny quote. Actually, let me see if I can find it and read it. This would be like the normal move, right? Like just connect here. The comment was, where is it? Black 19, that's 119, is an uncompromising move. Sekiyama seems to be spoiling for another fight and obviously considers connecting at 22, that's this move, considers this connection to be beneath his dignity. That's one of those funny things is where it's like not exactly explaining why this connection is bad, but just like somehow it would be so painful to just connect here. That was beneath his dignity, apparently. So he plays here. Now the idea is that during this fight with the white group, maybe black will get to Atari at A at like a really opportune moment, right? But why not Atari now? The thing about that is white could actually counter Atari and pick up these stones. Now, this doesn't look like that huge of a deal, especially when black's getting all these forcing moves on the outside. But the thing about it is, right, good, Funny Bunny. Once we capture, these stones are no longer short of liberties, so it would leave A as well. And there still would be no guarantee of killing white on the right-hand side. So, kind of interesting. So he plays here. I know, all those diagonals. Shusaku answers one time, and then he comes back for this Aji. Connecting would be pretty heavy, so black's got to give that up. So white gets a Panuki, which is pretty good, and there's still tons of Aji here, right? Like there's this move, and there's even some other moves, which I'm going to show in a second. But first, let's just see black's move. He plays here, threatening to connect under. There's actually deeper meaning behind this move, though. This Panuki for white has some follow-ups. He can play here, and when black plays here, where next for white? You kind of have to keep your eye on the ball here to see the best next move. Yeah, we're going to come through this direction. Good, Knob. Because now we've cut the entire thing off, right? So now the whole thing's dead. So if you remember black's move in the game at A, that would allow him to connect underneath, right? So that would save him. Now there's some other variations here, but it, all the same idea, right? So he plays here. White's got to try to settle this group. It's actually not easy though, right? Because he took some time out to make this Panuki. So we should expect that black's going to get a pretty good result on the right-hand side. He gets to connect up. White is all floating. Notice that white can be cut through here, but connecting would be too heavy. So white actually decides that the best thing to do is to give these stones up. That's exactly what he does. And he just, he's going to try and live with half. So he's sort of parrying this attack. Black gets a chance to save these stones, and white lives like this. So black got some compensation. At the same time, white kind of handled the attack pretty well, right? Notice how he doesn't have a weak group anymore. That's one of the benefits of getting rid of heavy stones, is if you can, end the pain as soon as possible, just settle your group, then you can do something else instead of being stuck with a weak group for the whole game. Okay, so black makes an exchange and then plays on top. So the game is going to be decided by how much black can actually get on top here. And white starts by following up his probe from earlier. Plays a double Hane here, which is pretty powerful. Black has two choices, A or B. He goes with B. A would be possible as well. It would end up like this. And then Miyamoto thinks white will invade here, aiming at these three stones. And the Aji of this attachment at A, and the liberty shortage of these three stones would be really just an issue for black in the fighting to come here. So, but that would be playable. He decides to go with this one instead. Atari. Now white is trying to live up here. Of course, these stones in the corner need help. Oh wait, I think oh yeah, I broke the tree. He actually Atari's first. I thought something was wrong there. Atari and then push. You guys are so happy about it. Okay, so next move for white. This next move I thought was really cool. I wouldn't have gotten it. It creates a Miai. I'll give you a hint by saying I would just think about A. And white's move is close to A, but slightly different and creates a better Miai. H15. Nope. G15. Nope, you're trying a little too hard. So he actually plays the same idea as A, but one step lower. And now let's see if we can appreciate the difference here. The Mii is A and B, right? Which actually works better than this Mii, right? Because this A doesn't work as good as the other A. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. I need to try and illustrate this somehow. Okay, so for now, black cuts here, settles all his stones, and white gets this Hane. And pretty unexpectedly, black plays Tanuki. A little interesting. So white ends up getting this Atari. Black can't connect, and ends up getting this, right? So double Atari. Well, let's go back just to see this Mii. So with the second line move, for example, maybe let's just put something like here. This attachment is actually pretty powerful, right? Because you get this push next. And now how do you answer that? You can't answer directly, right? So I really appreciated like the detail of putting this on the second line instead of the third line. And that's something I would only get on like my luckiest day. So hopefully you guys see why that is cool. Okay, so we got to here. And now black's not going to save the 4 stones, right? Because they're not valuable since white's connected anyway. So he just continues here. Take some points and put some pressure on this group. White's not that scared though. Now that he's thick in this area, he goes for another invasion. Sort of an attacking invasion actually against this A-stone. Black says, okay, well, I said I was going to attack you on the right-hand side, so I'm going to continue for now. And nice angle point surrounding move here. Gonna surround you. White has to take the eye. Now black comes out and disconnects. Notice that white could connect easily before this Kosumi. Where for white here? How do we help this stone? The light move. Yeah, good. Play the knight's move. We don't really care if black tries to cut one stone off and give us a bunch of forcing moves. That would be just fine. So we don't want to get too heavy here. But notice this has become pretty complicated. We've got white's A group, we've got black's B group, and then we've got the C group, all that are sort of in contention here. White plays here. So again, he's ignoring his group on the right for now, but he helped this group a bunch, and these 2 square stones are almost starting to look dead. So this is definitely a heated fight. Okay, I think what's next? Atari, right? Oh, wait, not Atari. Force first. So he forces, plays this Atari. He's trying to go after the eye shape. White plays here. Yeah, now I'm breaking the branches. That's just cruel, huh? So we've got one eye for sure, but believe it or not, the eye in this area is not guaranteed yet. Let's see how this works. So he plays here, and white plays another brave move. He does not go for life. He plays here, which indirectly helps the A group, and it also helps this group, right? Which is pretty interesting. So let's see black's attack. He pushes in, and takes this ko. So now you can see that this is not a real I yet, right? A, B are sort of a miai. Now it's actually really hard to kill white though, because first of all he has this ko threat which he just prepared. And let's see, what else should I show? I think there's another variation in here that's actually kind of important. Let me make sure I show it at the right spot. I think it would be here. Okay, so let's say we just, instead of surrounding first, we go for the kill. And we play here and here. So there's some Aji around here, which is the problem, right? So Atari, if you don't want to give them the I, got to connect. That's Atari, and then connect, right? So it looks pretty unreasonable to try and kill from earlier. So I think that's why Shusaku is okay with playing away so many times. But we actually get into some additional reading here in a second, which we're going to see. Not sure when the best time to show this variation is, though. Let's go back and show it. The basic idea is that let's say white just backs off. Even if black goes to take the I away, this is still pretty dangerous, right? Atari, Atari, Sente, Sente, that Sente, because A could come out and capture 3 stones. So it seems like at least there's a semi-I in this area, also with the ko involved, right? So A is not alive either. So that's just some of the aji to see in this area. Now, what about these stones? They're about to die, and black actually uses this as a ko threat, which is pretty interesting. There's a couple interesting things about this ko threat. One thing is he's starting to save this group. The other thing that Miyamoto pointed out is that if black can get A in Sente, then he can do what we just saw, right? Because that would fix the cut if he could get A and Sente. So that would be pretty dangerous. This ko is heavy for white. The impression I got from Miyamoto's commentary was that it's actually difficult for black to try and force this issue. So it's kind of like on the edge, but in a way difficult for black, if that makes sense. Obviously it's complicated. And this part's pretty complicated too, actually. Let's see what happens here. This is a pretty crazy sequence by black here that really worked out nicely. So let's just follow along here. Now when white comes through, black has this move and this move. And it's a question of A or probably should put it here, or B. White goes with A, black captures. With this one, again, I think it's going to be a semi-I, A against B. I think this is probably the next move, right? And I'm not sure if white has enough liberties. Miyamoto didn't cover this other than to say too dangerous for white. sort of deal. Obviously, it's extremely complicated. So ends up like this. White takes Atari and Sente and says, can I connect under, please? Yeah, this group is in big danger, right? So the question is he going to be able to save this? He plays the Atari, and it's complicated, right? It's like, if you connect at B, maybe I can play A and swallow your group. If you connect underneath at A, which in fact is what Shusaku does, that lets white capture. Interesting, right? And so can't forget the group on the right either. There's still the ko there. So white plays here to ensure himself of life, and black connects. And at this point, white has actually gone ahead in territory, which I don't know, it's hard to know when that really happened because black has been attacking so severely and rather well, but somehow Shusaku just, was light on his feet in this game and was able to weather it out. Let's go back and look at some of the variations. So the idea here is if black plays here to try and kill, white can take this in Sente and can turn here. If black keeps going for the eyes, he's got to play here. White can get this in Sente, which is pretty important, and can play here. Notice the A-B exchange protected this eye. So white could actually live here, which means that it seems like black is dying with A. So that's why black did not block. Now that brings up the question, what's different about this one? Because this should be similar, right? So what does black do now? That's interesting. I hadn't actually looked at this earlier. Is there room to live now? Just like this? I see. Interesting. Yeah, this is really, really complicated. Really complicated. Okay, there's actually one more crazy variation that I want to make sure to show. Oh, I actually already was showing it. Except I just left the end off. So the other thing to notice about this situation is that, okay, A is dead, but what about the B group, right? There's still the ko for that. The thing that is kind of a pain for black in this result is let's assume, or let's pretend rather, that white wins the ko. There's the matter of A later on, right? Like if the B group lives and then white gets to play A, well then these guys are dead. So it's really a really dangerous way of playing. Okay, so where's the real game? Here. So this is the real game, and this is the point where Miyamoto said white is actually ahead in territory now, despite Sekiyama's impressive fighting and his attacks. So now it's going to be mostly endgame. White pushes. Let me make sure I don't make any more mistakes at this point. Close this area up. Here's a Sente Hane. That connection's pretty big. This is pretty big in itself, and the other thing to realize is it's actually starting to aim at cutting soon here. So black makes one exchange and then fixes. Yeah, this is the real game. And white is ahead in territory now, so they play Yosei for a bit. Protect the corner. Black descends. Gets a nice move here. White actually plays from this side, right? Because as we've talked about before, this b2 is Sente, so white actually has to be easygoing in this situation. So he gets that. Okay, let's see. Where to next? Atari and Connect is Sente. Notice A, B, C sort of thing. So black just plays B now to make sure he's safe. That also threatens the throw-in at A. So white has to protect. Sente, Sente. Reduces from here. White makes a turn. It's kind of an interesting move. We'll see more details on this in a second. Atari. White captures. Here you can see their fighting spirit because he doesn't connect immediately. He pushes and gets his Hane first, then he connects. And now this is interesting. Black is really looking at the liberty shortages here. You can tell when your opponent plays a move like this, you know he's definitely looking at something, right? So white actually can't play A. He captures. All right, if we play here, now it's connect and die. So black's trying to squeeze white's liberties here as best he can, but white just captures. So he has to connect. White goes underneath. He tries to do a Hane here and a throw in. And he throws in here. And it looks like there's a lot of liberty shortages in white. And there's actually is, but this isn't even Sente. And white plays here, and black resigns. Now, white was already ahead, so I think black was more or less looking for a place to resign. This actually doesn't connect, by the way. So why is white doing this? It should be Semidori, right? So the idea is, oh wait, we still have Sente. It's probably Atari there. So black's gonna have to spend moves to take these off the board, right? See that? It's really annoying. The A stones have to kill the B stones eventually, which means uh, black has to spend, I should probably use the number tool, has to spend 3 more stones inside his own area to kill those. So that's like -3 points. That's called Semidori, when you force them to capture the stones like that. H10 became Sente instead of H10. J10. Ah, yeah, forcing. Yeah, white's going to be able to force from the outside. And so that was the game essentially. Just to show real quick, just to be sure that white um, is safe here just by one, right? Okay, so this is the last game we see from Sekiyama. I think there was one more game, but that's given in part two of the book. Part two of the book, by the way, it's kind of like an appendix that just has a bunch of Kifu without any actual commentary. So I'm not sure if we're gonna do those or not eventually. Have to decide. But let me just read kind of the synopsis for this game that Miyamoto gave because it was pretty interesting. He said, although Sekiyama played aggressively and demonstrated impressive strength in the infighting, Shusaku's greater skill and overall grasp of the position enabled him to parry successfully the series of attacks launched by his opponent. The lightness of Shusaku's style is the most memorable feature of this game. Sekiyama did a little better in the first half of the Nijubango. He won 4 of the first 10 games and 3 of the second 10. But all in all, he performed surprisingly well against Shusaku. Perhaps the most impressive aspect of the series that Sekiyama played his own individualistic style of Go throughout, giving free rein to his innate aggressiveness and indulging to the full his penchant for irregular shamaris. He in turn was impressed by Shusaku's originality. Sekiyama played Mokuhazushi every game, but each time Shusaku responded with a different Fuseki strategy. He must have enjoyed the series just as much as Sekiyama. Now, this is what's really interesting. He says, finally, the reader might like to test his insight by making up his own mind whether or not Shusaku threw the final game, given in part 2, which he lost by 1 point as a present to Sekiyama. So it sounds like in the final game, the 20th game of the Nijubango, perhaps Shusaku lost by 1 point as sort of a present to his opponent. I'm not sure. It's interesting. Senjubango? Sen is 1,000, right? No, I don't know of any Senjubangos. Oh, Sanjubango. Oh no, Senjubango would be 1,000 times. That would be like 10,000. Yeah. Um, we do go over one Sanjubango, which is 30 game series, and that's the one that Shusaku's most famous for. Do you know which player that's with? Let's test your Go history. Yeah, Ota Yuzo. Ota Yuzo. Yeah. Okay. So that's the game for now. Let's see. What's next time? The next game is another game against Honimbo Shuwa, so that should be cool. That'll be exciting next week. By the way, I forgot to mention, sorry for the delay. I know it's been a while. We had the game with Mr. Yang, which hopefully you all enjoyed, which was like probably like 3 weeks ago. So I didn't do a lecture on that day. And then I was going to do one last week, but some personal stuff came up. Um, but we should be back on normal schedule again. Oh, you missed the Mr. Yang lecture? Yeah, that's unfortunate. Sorry to hear that. I'm planning on setting another one up for the first week of October, so maybe that'll make you feel a little better. Um, it probably was recorded, Frigate, but not only for individual purposes. So people who attended the lecture were free to record and keep it for themselves. But Mr. Yang doesn't want us recording and uploading it. So unfortunately, I wouldn't feel good uploading that or sharing it. So you're probably gonna have to wait for the next one. But for the ones you show up to, you know, feel free to record it for your own purposes and use it as long as you like. All the lectures are during times I can't be here. That's too bad. I think the Mr. Yang ones, we've been doing them at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on Saturdays at like 3 months apart. So the next one will be early October, and the next one after that will be early January. Kick off the new year. That's when oh, I see. Interesting. Who's going to Go Congress? US Go Congress, I guess I should say, since I think EGC is coming up too. I know I was gonna say that's like the total American thing to do. Yeah, it's a total American thing to do is just to say Go Congress, like not realizing there's other countries that also have Go Congresses. I'm guilty, sorry. Okay. I haven't um, confirmed yet, but I'm planning on going. It would be cool if we could figure out, you know, who in the study group Q is going to be there and we could maybe meet face to face. That would be fun. Starstorm is? You might? Okay, cool. Hope to meet some people. I went in 2011 and I got to meet Yo-Yo Ma, and that was the shining moment of the entire week. Watching him at the top of the three dan table, beating everyone. All right, see you guys.